Hey, hello, hello, hello. It's Renita Alexander, the Leadership Locksmith. I am here. I'm doing a couple of things here. I'm live in a couple of different places, so hopefully you can see me. I'm on StreamYard on Facebook as well as YouTube, and I'm also on Instagram. So hopefully I can be heard in both locations. If you're here with me live, just give me a thumbs up or comment. I won't be able to see you. I'm using StreamYard on Facebook and also on YouTube, so I won't be able to see your name unless you give me permission to do so. So please give StreamYard permission to so that I can see your name. And so welcome to Set It Up Sunday. This is my weekly training. It's my conversation around the ways that we can be intentional about setting up our week for success in whatever way we define success. I am Renita Alexander, the Leadership Locksmith and the host of Set It Up Sunday. I usually try to keep this short, no more than about 15 minutes. And so that's my goal tonight. I want to talk about it's Women's History Month. So I'm going to be looking at IG camera as well as the my other camera. So I'll be turning back and forth. Anyway, it's Women's History Month, and I was asked to do a quick video around some of the obstacles I had encountered due to gender. And so obviously I do all things around leadership. And so I decided I wanted to do the video around the bias that, women experience who aspire to leadership positions. I thought that was very pertinent, given that the theme for International Women's Day, which is on the 8th, is Break the Bias. And it's about the bias that women encounter in the workspace. So that's what I'm going to be talking about for the month of March. So just kind of stick around with the exception of there's one Sunday that I will be finishing up my masterclass. So we'll be talking about some barriers that women encounter. So I guess we will be talking about bias that women encounter for the month of March. So I just want to start off just this week, this Sunday, just talk about, what women encounter and why. So I want to just set some some information, starting with what bias is. And so bias is, simply a tendency, it's an inclination, it's a prejudice, a preference toward or against something or someone. Some biases are positive, maybe considered more helpful. Like, for instance, if you choose not to eat red meat, that because of the information you have around how difficult that is to digest and maybe some of the health issues around that. So that's maybe a bias, an example of a bias. But biases are often based on stereotypes, and rather than actual knowledge of an individual person or a particular circumstance. And so whether, positive bias or negative bias, it's a cognitive shortcut that can result in prejudgments that can then lead to faulty decision making or even discriminatory practices. So there's all kinds of bias. There's gender, there's race, there's age, sexual orientation, geographic location, what generation you're in, your experience, your politics, your personality, whether or not, again, we eat red meat. So there's all kinds of things that we have preferences or beliefs or, that we have toward things. And then people have judgments around that. then we have the things that we prefer about preferences. So say hey and think about your preferences when it comes to appearances, and just put those in the chat. And you can comment on this in IG, or you can comment on it. Obviously, if you're in Facebook, you can write a comment down. So when it comes to leadership, however, we see a huge bias. And that's for a lot of reasons, which I'm going to get into. But, for those of you that may think, does it really exist? Well, one of the resources that I use pretty frequently is it's called Project Implicit. And it was created about 10 years ago to educate the public about bias and to provide a virtual laboratory for collecting data on using the internet to collect data from people about bias. And it has a ton of free what they call implicit association tests, and those tests measure bias. So I use the gender career test in a lot of the leadership training that I do, and it reveals a link between family and females, and between career and males. And what it shows is that 76% of all participants associate men with career and women with family. 75% of participants prefer white people over Black people, and that, all participants of all color. So basically, when it comes to leadership, we like white guys. And that was never more clear to me than in the 2016 presidential election, when we had an opportunity to elect one of the most qualified candidates in our nation's history, but instead we chose the white guy. So the real problem is that behaviors and stereotypes associated with leadership are inconsistent with those associated with women. That gender bias just comes from a variety of sources. It's fostered by the pervasive and persistent stereotypes about women's abilities, about our potential, about our characteristics. And, I'm not discounting, biological differences. Yes, there are biological differences that affect how we show up when we are born. Who we are energetically, hormonally is on a spectrum, though. We all have masculine and feminine energy. We all have male and female hormones. Thank goodness, the belief that there's this huge difference between the way men and women are intrinsically and biologically wired is slowly being overcome by research. But we're still socialized very differently. Our families, our communities, our culture are responsible for our socialization. And unfortunately for many women, they are subjected to reinforcement of the stereotypes about what women can and cannot do. And so then it becomes not just how others see us, it becomes how we see ourselves. So, our attitude about us is reinforced by what we are taught and how we're socialized. We are, what we're told about what we can and cannot do, what we see or don't see, our lived experiences. All of those things affect how we see ourselves. And many little girls are told to be sweet, silent, and sacrificial. We are encouraged to be collaborative, to seek consensus, to communicate our feelings. We are encouraged to maintain equality, to think about how what we do might affect the other person or the group or the community, to be humble. And these are all powerful characteristics, right? But sometimes it undermines us in the leadership realm. And because we carry these beliefs and these behaviors into adulthood and into the workplace. And we lose our power, especially in a predominantly male environment, because, that behavior sometimes plays into the stereotypes. We downplay our authority or our knowledge to maintain that equality. We make requests of those who work for us instead of telling those we work for us what to do. We make requests because we don't want to be seen as pushy. We don't claim our own ideas, right? Because we don't want to be seen as selfish. We communicate our feelings, right, instead of our the facts around, what we know, our knowledge, and we make ourselves the subject of our observations. We apologize for our brilliance, and because we don't want to make others feel bad. We undermine our authority by guessing a course of action instead of giving an order. We make ourselves small so as not to seem ambitious. And so we're not always seen as competent. And in fact, the expectations around how we should behave are so gendered that when we do something that's more in alignment with traditional leadership, like, for instance, forcefully advocating for a viewpoint, or actively pursuing a competitive objective, or being fiercely committed to performing in an excellent manner, are showing up authentically in our authentic way, but different from the way that people show up in that predominantly male environment, we often experience backlash. So, as you know, I have a military background, and I know of so many women who have been punished and pushed out because they exhibited leadership behavior. Behavior that's encouraged and lauded in men suddenly becomes toxic when the leader is a woman. And it's not just men who view women suspiciously. Women who have succeeded or want to succeed in predominantly male work environments say they experience difficulty with other women. Now, a lot of that is due to the expectations we have about how women should behave in the workplace. Again, that's different from how we expect men to behave in the workplace. So I'll talk about that at some later point, because I'm about to run out of time. But I wanted to just spend some time just talking about, the ways that we show up to sort of prevent bias, and so that we can be aware of that, because awareness is always the first step. You can't change behavior unless you are aware of it. And unfortunately, 73% of women experience bias at work, according to the latest research. Yet less than a third of employees are able to recognize bias when they see it. And so whether it's deliberate or unconscious, bias makes it harder for women to get hired, to get promoted. And not only that, it negatively impacts their day-to-day work experience. So it hurts not just the women, but companies. And of course, we're seeing that right now in this great resignation / time of reflection. And so, I want to encourage you to be aware, and then also, as that awareness comes, to be reflective. So here's an example of, knowing something and then reflecting on behavior that I experienced recently in a Zoom meeting, a Zoom teaching that I was a part of. And, I spent some time reflecting on the fact that we often are biased, again, about women taking up space. So either with their physical experience or with their voice, at a meeting or whatever. And so I experienced feeling that a woman was going on and off topic in a meeting. And so I thought that, and then I thought, wait, is that her, or is it me, being biased against the fact that she was talking? So I took a minute to reflect, and then asked someone else who was also a part of the experience if they had, seen that or experienced that. So awareness and reflection. So whether you're listening to this live or after the fact, please share some of the ways that you can be more aware of the bias that you may feel toward women in particular in the workplace, and that's whether you're a woman or a man. I do want to just announce one thing. I'll bring this up again next week, next Sunday. So Monday the 14th, I start my free master class. It's called Unblock Your Barriers. And it's about all the ways that we stop ourselves from doing the things that we're supposed to do, be it in the workspace or just in our lives in general. And so it's a free master class. It starts on Monday, March the 14th, right at 7 o'clock. I'll be in Zoom as well as Facebook. I don't know if I'm going to be here live on IG, but I definitely will be in Facebook. So I would love to have you join me. All right, I am out of time. It is 7:46, so I'm out of time. If you are here watching live, please share, as I said, some ways that you can be more aware of the bias that you may experience or the bias that you may be feeling toward women in your workspace or in the environment that you're in. And please share that with us. And I am going to let you go for this Sunday evening. Again, I'll be back next Sunday right at 7 o'clock, and I hope to see you here with me. Have a great evening.